let us all do we can to build a better future. Let's get started with our first story. So I want to bring up Tulsi Gabbard. She's recently, again, she's a private citizen now. She's no longer in Congress, but, you know, she brings up something that's very close to us, and that is big tech censorship. I just want to remind everyone, again, between March of 2020 to September of 2020, Harlan's Media, this original channel that you're watching us on, was shadow banned, and that was a very difficult time. And I don't want any YouTuber or any content creator, no matter what platform they do use, to go through what we went through.
Especially for as poor of a reason as what we went through. Yeah,
it was very stupid. And the thing is, big tech is a very serious issue. So it's a Tulsi time. Let's play this first video of Tulsi Gabbard. She's on Fox News. Let's just hear what she has to say. And again, it's a warning of big tech and why we shouldn't be in a super fast rush to censor those who we disagree with, because again, progressives and independents and libertarians also feel the wrath of it more than just Trump supporters.
And just a reminder, because we hear this, and you can let people, this is really for you guys to pass on to other people when it matters to pass on, that there are a lot of people that go, oh, Tulsi's clearly a right-winger, oh, Jimmy Dore, Glenn Green, clearly right-wingers, of course, because they go on Fox News. They don't understand the reality of the situation, which is, that's the only place that'll have them. They are barred from NBC. They're barred from CNN.
ABC,
and so
CBS,
so basically, in their mind, the only acceptable answer is to not go anywhere on TV that they don't like. But understand that there is a reason that this is the way it is.
Yeah, and look, again, you know, Tulsi Gabbard, she's a private citizen. She's not in Congress. And I agree with her, the fact that, look, we got to worry about big tech. But first, let's play that first video.
Former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard from Hawaii, Democrat, joins us now. Congresswoman, great to see you. I know you've just been out of the job for a week or two. Are you surprised they're pushing forward with this extra surveillance on would-be domestic terror?
It's so dangerous. You know, as you guys have been talking about, this is an issue that all Democrats, Republicans, independents, libertarians should be extremely concerned about, especially because we don't have to guess about where this goes or how this ends. When you have people like former CIA Director John Brennan openly talking about how he's spoken with or heard from appointees and nominees in the Biden administration who are already starting to look across our country for these types of movements similar to the insurgencies they've seen overseas, that in his words, he says, make up this unholy alliance of religious extremists, racists, bigots. He lists a few others and adds at the end, even libertarians. So when you look at their process and they start looking at, okay, what characteristics are we looking for as we're building this profile of a potential extremist? What are we talking about? Religious extremists? Are we talking about Christians, evangelical Christians? What is a religious extremist? Is it somebody who's pro-life? I mean, where do you take this? You start looking at, okay, well, obviously you have to be a white person, obviously likely male. Libertarians, well, if anybody who loves freedom, liberty, maybe has an American flag outside their house, or people who, you know, attended a Trump rally. Once you start walking this down the path, you see where it leads to a very dangerous undermining of our civil liberties, our freedoms in our Constitution, and a targeting of almost half of the country.
Ilhan Omar says this. We already have laws on the books, sorry, but you are just going to have to learn to apply them. The other thing I thought was interesting, Congresswoman, I don't see any FBI demanding more tools. They feel they got the tools. These are congressional leaders or members who feel as though they're so freaked out by Trump supporters, they still can't understand why anyone would support him. They want to get to the bottom of it. And do you think the whole deprogramming of Trump supporters, this new buzzword among detractors and Democrats, has anything to do with this?
Yeah, I think it does very directly. I think just on the FBI front, I read a great op-ed this morning from a former FBI agent who made a very strong case for why this new domestic terror law introduced by Adam Schiff is wrong and is directly going to undermine our constitutional rights and freedoms. This whole effort, whether you're talking about this bill or people saying that we have to deprogram these Trump cultists and people who voted for Trump because they've been radicalized, all of this just goes to further tear our country apart. And it moves towards the thing Joe Biden said in his inauguration speech that he shouldn't happen, which is a dehumanization of your opponent. And that's where his voice is so necessary right now. He is the president of this country. He delivered this speech, his voice, himself, speaking to the American people. He needs to denounce people like John Brennan and their statements, bills like the one Adam Schiff put forward, and truly speak to the American people about how we must come together around, you know, the Constitution, around our Bill of Rights, around these rights that have been endowed to us by our Creator.
If he had your leadership ability, he would do it. Maybe he still will. That's why she ran for president. Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, thanks so much.
Okay,
thank you, Brian.
Let's just address just what Tulsi Gabbard was saying in here. You know, which is, again, was what happened in the Capitol. I think it took a lot of people off guard. And, you know, let's just remember that a lot of those individuals were let in by the cops. And, you know, there was now, of course, there was violence back and forth between the cops and some of those individuals. So it's 50-50.
There
depending
is in most situations where the cops are, and there are peaceful protesters that turn violent or violent. But yeah, again, I'm going to quote Rules for Rulers, as I always love to do.
Yeah.
The people only invade the palace when the army lets them.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, let's look at the aftermath. And the aftermath is that Facebook and Twitter, in their rush to remove Donald Trump, also went after a lot of his supporters, individuals that maybe tweeted for Trump. But now we're seeing progressives, independents, socialists, libertarians, democratic socialists also feeling the wrath of this chopping block of internet censorship by Facebook, by Twitter, and other media platforms. And it's something that we should be concerned about, because this is going to impact a lot of content creators, and just not news channels as well. I mean, look, there's a lot of progressive news channels on YouTube as well, but there's also libertarians, there's also independents, socialists, all that kind of stuff. And this is something we have to be afraid of, because again, seeing this, I'm already having nightmares of what we went through between March and September of 2020, and I don't want anyone to go through that. But you know, let's really be honest with all of you. We nearly lost everything because of censorship, because of the shadow ban. It's devastating to know, like when we had to close up shop here when the lockdowns were happening, it was very real, where me and Daniel were talking about, well, if Harlan's Media remains censored, do we sell the studio? How do we end everything? And it was difficult, because I know he was upset, I was upset, and we had no answer to give anyone. Daniel, real quick, before we play the next video.
It's a thing that we got to worry about, because on one hand, in a lot of ways, they're trying to pass new laws, but like even as things are, like if you don't include like the NSA level stuff or the CIA level stuff, the stuff that like, you know, people like us would go through, I actually am not super against the laws in the books, not because I don't think that they're bad, but like comparatively, it's not our biggest priority. And ideally, if you want to do, you don't do censorship through, again, it's like this big thing, oh, your First Amendment exists on Facebook and YouTube. We know it doesn't. We understand that legally as things are written. That's probably a much bigger issue. Net neutrality, a much more relevant issue to us of picking and choosing what traffic gets to be prioritized, which is perhaps the biggest thing, that we're not a mainstream outlet. So our viewership and the amount of reach we get and the amount of people that get alerted to our live streams is just not as good as theirs. That's a much more relevant thing to us. And the fact that YouTube at any moment for any reason can go, you guys are out. And technically, based on the agreement that you do when you sign up for being on YouTube, that's something they can do. That's much more of an issue, and that's something that has always been an issue that we've talked about, but that's getting ramped up more and more and more. And that's personally what I'm more worried about, is that we don't have a fix for either making, again, either opening up net neutrality so that they can't make these choices, or simply tweaking through the FCC that they can't do this. Because I'd like to have, like, if you're going to kick out a channel it's basically a job, it's a livelihood. YouTube is a job creator, as they like to say, I should say. They should have a system that goes through the regular censorship thing. Like, you have to, like, it has to be the same as what the government standard is for free speech. That's all I ask.
Yeah. All right, let's play this next video. Again, this is Tulsi Gabbard speaking about censorship and also Congress and its willingness to enact more censorship. Let's play this video to get to hear its full entirety from Tulsi.
The mob that stormed the Capitol on January 6th
to try to stop Congress from carrying out its constitutional responsibilities were behaving like domestic enemies of our country. But let's be clear. The John Brennans, Adam Schiffs, and the oligarchs in big tech who are trying to undermine our constitutionally protected rights and turn our country into a police state with KGB-style surveillance are also domestic enemies and much more powerful and therefore dangerous than the mob that stormed the Capitol. Now, John Brennan said,
so I know looking forward that the members of the Biden team who have been nominated or have been appointed are now moving in laser-like fashion to try to uncover as much as they can about what looks very similar to insurgency movements that we've seen overseas, where they germinate in different parts of the country and they gain strength, and it brings together an unholy alliance frequently of religious extremists, authoritarians, fascists, bigots, racists, nativists, even libertarians.
Now, President Biden, I call upon you and all members of Congress from both parties to denounce these efforts by the likes of Brennan and others to take away our civil liberties that are endowed to us by our Creator and guaranteed in our Constitution. If you don't stand up to these people now, then our country will be in great peril.
Okay, so now here's a connecting story that a lot of people should be worried about, because again, we should be concerned about big tech and Congress willing to let big tech run amok with censorship, because Wikipedia, this is an article from Ben Norton. Now, this is a very long article, and you could find the link to all of our stories in the description box below in the show notes. This video is going to be clipped, so when you see this video clipped and you want to see this full article, go to our main live show. You'll be able to see it in the video on our YouTube channel, but it's important you guys check out this article. It's written by Ben Norton. Wikipedia formally censors the Grayzone as regime change advocates monopolize editing. So I want to read a couple of excerpts from this article. So internet encyclopedia giant Wikipedia is censoring independent news websites by adding them to an official blacklist of taboo, depreciated media outlets. Sounds shockingly familiar, depressingly familiar. And again, Wikipedia is a very large outlet.
Wikipedia is deciding who's in and who's out. By the way, I want to point out Wikipedia is a free, open platform. So if anyone gets the idea to, I don't know, copy all of their listings and everything and basically copy how they run their site and create a new Wikipedia free or something of that nature that doesn't have these things, that can be done technically.
So the Grayzone is among the news sites targeted by the censorship campaign. Others include leftist and anti-imperialist outlets like Mint Press News and Latin American news broadcaster Telesur, along with several other prominent right-wing political sites, including the Daily Caller. The campaign to blacklist the Grayzone was initiated by Wikipedia editors who identified as Venezuelans and openly support the country's right-wing U.S.-backed opposition. Oh boy, here we go again. These users obsessively monitor Venezuela, related articles, aggressively pushing a regime change line and working to exercise any piece of information or opinion that interferes with their agenda. Together, this tiny handful of editors has successfully banned Wikipedia from citing the Grayzone, falsely claiming that the website publishes unreliable, false, or fabricated information. In fact, in its more than 4 years of existence, including its first 2 years hosted at a website, Alternet, whose use is not forbidden on Wikipedia, the Grayzone has never had to issue a correction or retract story. That's a phenomenal record. That is such a great record for any media outlet to have in such a short time. Even more absurdly, the editors behind the campaign to blacklist the Grayzone made it clear in their public discussions that they were motivated to censor the Grayzone's reporting based on the political perspectives of its writers, not on the basis of any falsehoods or distortions that appear on its website. This is some bad news, folks.
Anyone who doesn't agree with us is an invalid source.
The Wikipedia editor who presided over the official survey to censor the Grayzone is a hyper-partisan supporter of the Venezuelan opposition. Excuse me. This figure also initiated and moderated the surveys to successfully blacklist Telesur and Venezuelan analysis among the few news sources that challenged the hegemonic anti-Chavista perspective furthered by Western mainstream media. Wikipedia has imposed numerous guidelines against this kind of advocacy editing, which blatantly violates the platform's founding principle mandating a neutral point of view. But the website and Wikimedia Foundation that runs it has taken no action against the gang of politically motivated editors that targeted Grayzone. Instead, it has given them free rein to flagrantly sabotage the encyclopedia's ostensible commitment to neutrality and shield the public from critical reporting that conflicts with Washington's agenda. The cast of editors seeking to censor the Grayzone runs the gamut from Russiagate conspiracy theorists to anarchist neocons to regime change lobbyists to elite Venezuelan opposition members. Basically, anyone threatened by journalism that challenges the Washington consensus. Their ability to dominate Wikipedia is symptomatic of a larger crisis that has fundamentally corrupted the website and torn its stated principles to shreds. Wikipedia, again, I'm just going through a few short excerpts of this article. I urge you guys to read it full in entirety. Ben Norton did a fantastic job on this. Wikipedia is one of the most popular websites on Earth with more traffic than the mega corporation Amazon. Oh boy, Jeff Bezos must be so jelly. It is far and away the top source of information for people all across the planet. Wikipedia publishes in several different languages. This article focuses on English language version of Wikipedia, which is by far the largest. Yet, while the website markets itself as an open source encyclopedia that anyone in the world can edit, the reality is the platform is tightly controlled by a small group of administrators and editors and heavily dominated by powerful institutions that have the resources to mobilize users to advance their interests. An academic study found from 2001 to 2010, a staggering 80% of its edits on Wikipedia were made by just 1% of its users. In other words, a tiny handful of editors have disproportionate control over what people across the world can read when they research something online. And retention rates for new editors have plummeted over years. So that means if you're a college student, don't click copy and paste anything you see on Wikipedia. It will screw you over, and your professors will know about it. Wikipedia's blacklist of independent media outlets, and this is an important excerpt from this article. Wikipedia maintains an official list of reliable sources. These are the news outlets that editors are allowed to cite in an article. Prominent editors and admins who have special privileges not afforded to average users debate what sources are considered legitimate on the encyclopedia. There is no independent oversight of this process, and it is, for the most part, monopolized by a small group which has repeatedly shown blatant political bias. In its list of reliable sources, Wikipedia maintains a hierarchy of classifications to measure how accurate a media outlet is. These designations have a color and name. Mainstream corporate media outlets are green, deemed generally reliable. So it's a good thing they never lied about the war in Iraq, Russiagate, election fraud. I mean, Daniel.
Just every day screwing things up.
Yeah, Dan, experts said that they're green. So stop that. Watch your tone or I'll stab you with an adjective.
Oh, that would
All right. So the Associated Press, AP, Reuters, New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, Fox News,
Huffington
CNN.
Post.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot that. CNN, BBC, The Guardian, Bloomberg, The Atlantic, The Daily Beast, BuzzFeed, The Intercept are all green lit of approval as well. For sources, there is not an editorial consensus of their reliability, so they fall into the yellow category. Examples of our more gonzo-style outlets like Vice, tabloids such as the Cosmopolitan and the Daily Mirror, some think tanks like the Center for Economic and Policy Research, and a few left-leaning websites like Democracy Now! And Counterpunch. Oh boy. However, most independent news websites are considered by Wikipedia to be generally unreliable and are hit with the red light of rejection. Alternate, The Canary, Electronic and DIFA, for example, are considered partisan sources, and Wikipedia editors can only credit them if they attribute their statements to the website in the text of the article. Some right-wing websites, such as The Blaze, which is, I think that's Glenn Beck's outlet, hey, they're still around.
Congratulations, Glenn. You somehow hamster balled your way to the present.
All right, well done, Glenn. The Daily Wire, the Quillette have been hit by the designation as well, as long as libertarian website Zero Hedge. But the censorship targeting the Grayzone represents an entirely different level of suppression. The Grayzone is part of a small handful of publications that have totally been blacklisted on Wikipedia. It is considered a depreciated source and is listed in dark red. This is the worst possible designation on Wikipedia. The censorship is a product of politicized pressure campaign by centrists.
Wait. Yeah. They're saying that Glenn Beck is a more reliable source than the Grayzone, which has never, just like Wikipedia, had to retract a story.
I mean, WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks never retracted a story.
Yes.
But the Grayzone, there is a large difference between Wikipedia and WikiLeaks. They are two different things.
Well, apparently they don't have to retract anything either if they're wrong or not.
So again, as stated before, the censorship is the product of a politicized pressure campaign by centrist pro-war editors who have sought to silence the Grayzone solely because they detest its reporting and editorial line. They have proven wholly unreliable to provide any concrete examples of inaccuracy or fabrication. The hyperpartisan editors who led this censorship campaign, named in detail below in this article, justify the blacklisting by claiming there is a consensus that the Grayzone publishes false or fabricated information. Some editors describe the Grayzone as Max Blumenthal's blog and question the website's editorial oversight. Now, again, Grayzone has never had to retract the story, never had to correct the record or say, oops, my bad, we made an oopsie.
Yeah.
So once again, the Grayzone has never been forced to issue a major correction or retract false story. The smear is absurd, and there is no evidence provided to back it up. Joining the Grayzone on the Wikipedia blacklist is Mint Press News, an independent left-leaning anti-war website, also based in the United States, but also, guys and gals and everyone else, so is WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks is also on there as well. So again, there's so much more in this article, and I'm only just covering the surface. I urge you guys to check it out in its full entirety. But again, go to Grayzone. You can see this article written by Ben Norton. You can find that link also in our show notes as well. It's open for everybody.
So let me get this straight. So what we're saying that Wikipedia is saying is that if you're against war, you're incorrect.
Well, you know, basically Wikipedia and its editors are running everything. And look, the thing is, this is something that is going to impact a lot of content creators, libertarians, socialists, Greens, Democrats, Republicans, independents. Doesn't matter what news source you watch online. I mean, if you upset the people who control everything, you will be censored. This is why Congress should not be in a fast rush to call for this immediate censorship or have big tech run the show, because everyone's going to be on the chopping block. And Tulsi Gabbard is raising the alarm. Now, Tulsi Gabbard's not in Congress, but to the 15 congressmen and women, progressive men and women that were on the force of vote petition, please, please, please don't rush into this, because it's going to impact people you follow too. We're all going to be on the chopping block, and we've dealt with it firsthand. Censorship is not the answer, and we cannot be going into our own small little bubbles, because if we're all stuck in our echo chambers, nothing will change.